Welcome to the Rant Live.
Welcome to the Rant Live webcast and podcast. We're glad to have you along with us. The Chicago Cubs just finished up a weekend series. What should have been a 4-game set. One game got postponed and moved or rescheduled as a doubleheader to Memorial Day. But the Cubs won 2 out of 3. And both of our predictions were wrong.
Yeah.
Because we were basing it on a 4-game series, but I think you were saying 2-2, which would have been 500, which is impossible in a 3-game series. And I think
they
I
did
went
win
3.
2, though. They did win 2.
They did win 2. So you were right in that aspect. And I was saying, I think I said 3 out of 4.
Yeah, and I will. I don't want to make myself sound too good. I thought they'd only win 1, and I thought a split was like the best they could hope for, to be honest. But yeah, I'll go ahead and stay with that because I did say that they could have done that. So they did win 2 games, which is good. And then you said they'd only lose 1, so we were both right.
Yeah,
in a sense.
So it pretty solid outing from top to bottom. We'll get into kind of a little bit more detail, but just overall, I'd say, against where you looked at the starting pitchers for the Milwaukee Brewers that the Cubs were up against, their top 3 guys who were just studs last year, completely shut the Cubs down. The Cubs really came to life, and it wasn't like they did more than they did against them last year, but take away that. What was it, 10-9 on Saturday?
Mm-hmm.
All the runs that they scored on Saturday, and is very close series and some interesting performances at the top of the list. What's your overall takeaway though?
I think the thing we've been talking about, and it's part of the reason, I kind of tempered expectations, and certainly only through 3 games. So I want to make sure we're very, very clear on that. But we've said, I think, this whole time that, like, if they're going to succeed and if they are going to, kind of make the most of what they've done. And I still believe that they didn't do enough in the offseason. I'll keep saying that. But it's the idea that they did go with more of a contact-heavy approach, with a more patient approach. And we saw now it helped tremendously that the Brewers' pitching was really bad. Like, Burns was off. Woodruff was horrible. I mean, he couldn't even throw his fastball for strikes repeatedly. I mean, that first inning, it was like he's throwing 96, 97 the whole time, but just missing all over the place. But the Cubs didn't chase. They put the pressure on. I think we're seeing Heyward kind of come back to earth. But they were putting the ball in play, and the Brewers were screwing up. Right?
And I think it was more. It was more a product, to me, at least watching the game, of the Cubs just not swinging at those borderline strikes and letting it play out to see, how the umpire was going to call the game versus swinging early. They were really patient in their approach, and that was consistent from top to bottom. So
Mm-hmm.
if you want to look at individual performances, which we'll do here soon, but I think top to bottom, you really saw a patient approach. I mean, Rafael Ortega didn't really do anything stellar, but he did take several walks, at the top of the order, and he looked really patient. And that's something that we haven't seen, especially with the core of guys that we had that got traded away last year, who were just free swingers, not all of them, but we had a lot of guys that struck out that had pretty high K rates, and we just didn't see that in this first series. And so I think that contributed to a lot of what we saw from the Brewers starting pitchers.
Yeah. I mean, it was a bit of both, but I think this is the first time in a long time that, and again, right. We'll see how this continues, but if I look back and I want to make sure, like, because people, anytime you compare anything, you have to, like, preface it with 15 different caveats, or people are going to, twist it the wrong way. Oh, you're comparing them to 2016. Listen, this is not the 2016 Cubs, okay? I want to get that right out of the way. But that team, more so than any I've seen before or since with the Cubs, really took what their opponents gave them, right? They could adjust, if it was somebody who threw a lot of junk and they were a soft tosser, if it was somebody who threw hard, and they were aggressive when they needed to be. And that's kind of one thing I was surprised they weren't a little bit. I guess they were early against Peralta. That's the one thing that kind of bugged me because he's a big time first pitch strike thrower. Woodruff and Burns are similar. I mean, a lot of the times with these guys, when you see a guy who strikes out a bunch of people and doesn't walk many, you can be pretty sure that he's going to throw a lot of strikes, right? I mean, that's just pretty basic. But as far as first pitch strikes, and so there's a point at which you don't really want to be that patient because if this dude throws a bunch of junk and Peralta by all means has great curveball, great slider, you don't want to let that guy get strike one because now you're in an even worse spot than you would be against someone else who's not a giant strikeout threat, right? So anyway, but that 2016 team, like they would just hang around and they maintained that steady approach so that you knew they were going to wear somebody down. They're going to take pitches. The starters weren't going deep into games and then to get into the bullpen. And that's something that we have seen so far. This team takes they see a lot of pitches. I shouldn't say they take, and they do take a lot, but they see a lot of pitches, and that is going to help those guys down the line, right? The more pitches you can see, even if you're batting 6th, 7th, 8th in the order, you're seeing what this guy's got. You've got other people coming in reporting on what they're seeing. And that's more so than, somebody's going to go up there just hacking away right away. And, oh, great, you got a chopper to first. Oh, now you got to pop out to the catcher. And, oh, hey, there's 2 batters. You've seen 3 pitches so far, right? I felt like that was one of those things where, man, the Cubs gave guys a lot of very easy innings. And I just, the makeup of this team is such that even if they're not going to do a lot of damage, which is the one thing that really does concern me as the weather warms up, as you start needing that power, do they have the kind of ISO that can make up for that? Because there will come a time, and they had 2 homers in the series, but they gave up 3 in that 3rd game alone, and that's what sunk them, right? Early homer, and then they just couldn't manufacture any offense after that point. So there will come a time at which they're going to need that power. Are they going to have it is really where I kind of wonder about this long term. But, for now, it looks good.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the first game, the Cubs got behind early, 1-0, but they came back in the bottom of the 5th inning, and they scored 3 runs in what was a really nice inning. It was I think it felt to me like that was an inning that was kind of more a payoff of the patience, if that makes sense. We actually saw kind of like, it come together where Nico got a home run. He scored Jason Heyward. And I know we've got comments about Jason Heyward. We've got a lot of people, you see the comments on Twitter and social media. I've got news for you. Jason Heyward batted .375 in this series. He walked twice and he was 3 for 8.
Well, so one of those hits, only went about 50 feet and nobody really figured out how to catch it. So, So I think
exactly.
He was
it's small sample size.
A couple games. Yeah. Very much,
saying, but he didn't do anything.
He still concerns me.
Of course. I'm not saying there's not reason for concern, but where people are complaining that he shouldn't be in the lineup, you're going to have a hard time selling that to David Ross. Based on
no shit.
Obviously, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm just saying, I don't think he did anything that would make David Ross say, I need to pull him. I mean, honestly, I think that what David Ross is doing and what he has to do is he's got to put him on the field. If you have him in your lineup, he's not a bench guy. I mean, in what situation would you put him in the lineup strategically, unless it was like a defensive replacement? And even then, he's not great. So you've got to let him prove out whether he deserves that roster spot or not. Kind of give him a leash. And that's what else are you going to do with him? Right. I mean, so where people were surprised to see Jason Heyward starting, I was not at all surprised at that. You have to have him in there. You either have to have him succeed or fail, and he did not fail.
Yeah,
he didn't.
Not yet. We'll see. He didn't look great. He didn't look great succeeding, but he was a part of, again, a couple of walks. But he was. I will say this, right, and there are points at which, like, I'm definitely not a person who's down on strikeouts big time, but in certain situations, it's pretty obvious that getting outs through contact are better than a strikeout, because unless the catcher is dropping the ball and it's getting past him and runners are advancing, that strikeout isn't providing any room to advance a runner. Whereas, Heyward hit a grounder up the middle to second base. Colton Wong biffed it. Heyward hits that sky high pop up on the infield that nobody catches. and it goes for a single or whatever, right? So those are definitely better results than a strikeout, even though that's not the batted ball result you would ever want, right? You don't want to pop a ball up on the infield. You don't want a ground ball. It's just one of those things where right now BABIP is definitely working in his favor, right? And he's getting those good results. Now, does that continue? I don't know. He looked really good in 2020, and I have a feeling that he's going to come back down to earth. The other issue I have, and we've discussed it before, is that his defense in center is not such that it's certainly not Gold Glove caliber, right?
Well, and we definitely saw some hiccups, if that's what you want to call it. And I don't think it's Suzuki as much as it was Jason Heyward playing out of position, especially on that one fly ball, which was that yesterday, where Suzuki was there, kind of, and Jason Heyward was way out of position. He was way into right field, where I just don't think he belonged over there. And I think that to me felt like Jason Heyward not knowing how to play center field.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a part of it. You know, it's just
it worked out.
He's just not as comfortable there. He's not a natural center field. He's a great athlete, and I think, you know, had he been playing there 10 years ago, we're talking about a different story if that's where he traditionally had played. Sure. But he is a lifelong right fielder, and they're putting him in center. And that's what's kind of funny about it, right? Is I'm like, yeah, all right, you know, I honestly wonder if Suzuki wouldn't be a better center fielder, given he's an excellent athlete as well. But the fact that you're willing to move Heyward over, like if you look at it, say, all right, is he actually a better center fielder than Suzuki, and then vice versa? I don't know, but yeah, I'm with you, and I get it. Like, you basically have to, for lack of a better term, force him to play his way out of the lineup, right? That's what you've got when you're paying a guy that much, and not just that, but when he is the veteran leader of the team, you know, you let him go until he proves to you that you have to do something different. And that's what they're doing. And so far, you can't really argue with the results, right? It's too early for that anyway. But yeah, I mean, we'll see. But I tell you what, Ian Happ looks a lot better. And the fact that Happ has been playing in left the whole time versus DHing, you know, obviously the elbow's fine. I'm a little surprised by that. I thought we would see Clint Frazier a little bit more frequent. Again, 3 games, right? But I mean, I figured Frazier would get a couple of starts in left with Happ at DH. And it was a little bit weird. And one of our readers called me lazy for copying and pasting because, you know, I had a lineup post written. I write these things every day, right? And so the Cubs had a game on Friday. They got banged. And so they moved it to Saturday. Well, they kept the pitchers the same. I think myself and everyone else just assumed, all right, you'll keep the lineup the same. But they didn't. And that was a weird thing to me, is like, why would he, you know, did Ross second guess some things? Did something happen? You know, did somebody slip on their way in or whatever, you know, because like Frazier, I think, was going to get a start, and then he didn't. I'm trying to remember who all got changed. So I had to go back into the thing and address some stuff, but I just figured they're going to run it back, right? That was a little bit weird to me, because now you've got essentially, you know, those first few games, usually you do see, especially with a team like this that doesn't have, you know, 9 dudes who you're going to pencil in every single day at the same spots, right? There's a bunch of them, especially in the outfield. They're kind of interchangeable. So you figure you give some other guys a start there. I just thought that was odd that the lineup changed despite the pitching matchup remaining the same. But there again, I'm sure there are, you know, machinations behind the scenes that we don't really know about. But and it worked. So who am I to judge?
Yeah. I mean, that game on Saturday was just, I mean, it was everything we've waited for what felt like years, right? It was just an absolute clubbing from the very beginning of the game. I mean, you know,
the Brewers pitching was so bad.
It was bad. I mean, Ortega walks, Madrigal gets hit by a pitch
on the elbow guard. Walks. The only reason he got hit by that pitch is because he's got the Evo Shield elbow guard that actually hangs below his elbow, and it ticked off that thing. Like, I still couldn't even. I mean, you could hear it. I'm sure the and that's the thing. If you got that elbow guard, and it's a harder material, obviously, than just what the jersey would be. If that just ticks off his jersey sleeve, nobody hears it. But the ump can hear that tick right off the bottom of that elbow guard, which is, again, hanging below his elbow. And look, I'll take it. But I do have a bit of a problem with that. In the same way I do is, like, when they can do instant replay and you see that a guy's butt came off like as he's sliding, and maybe his thigh came off the bag or his hip, like by a hair. Like you could see, the human eye could never discern that, but when you can freeze frame it in high definition, you can see that he came out the bag for a fraction of a second while the tag was on him, and so now he's out. Which I understand that if we get down into the most granular detail of the letter of the law, technically that's correct, but to me that completely goes against the spirit of it, because there's no way you could have the body control to maintain that. Similarly, but that's like a modern thing. And I know guys have been wearing, batting gloves and some different kinds of guards and things, but if it hits something that you have placed on your body other than your jersey, other than your uniform or your body itself, right? Or your helmet, because obviously that's protective in that regard. I don't know. It's just weird. Like when that hangs below
it's
where your
something
elbow
that
is,
extends from your body.
Yeah.
I think is what you're saying.
I think that's the thing. Because if it was flush to his elbow, but then how do you, how do you legislate that? Get into it? I know it's difficult, and like I said, I'll take it. That one felt kind of cheap to me, but not that Woodruff deserved much of a benefit of the doubt, because he was awful. So
walk, hit by pitch, walk. This is how the game opened for the Cubs in the bottom of the first inning. They're up by 1 run. They haven't even done anything. They got Schwindel grounds into a force out and scores the second run. Suzuki has a sac fly. So there were no hits, and the Cubs were up by 3 runs. And then Heyward got a single, but that didn't score anyone. So that was, and that just felt like, it really did feel like the entire game, the Cubs really just taking advantage of the Brewers' incompetence more than anything. You just felt like the Brewers were just, they just, I don't know if they weren't there mentally. And I don't want to take away from the Cubs' performance, because I think the Cubs, like I said, they took advantage of these opportunities. And this is something that we haven't always seen, is being in situations where you can take advantage of things and then they don't. And so that's what we've seen the last few years. This entire series really felt like the Cubs took advantage of what was given to them, and that was refreshing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, it was, even Sunday's game, and they had a chance, right? And that was obviously that was kind of the bullpen. You could say blew it, but I think in the same, Chavez didn't look good, and I do have my concerns there. There's a certain point at which
Norris hasn't looked good at all. He got in on Sunday
because he looked great,
and on Thursday he looked bad.
Yeah,
both times.
And that's, so there again, and Norris certainly is not 38 years old at this point, but there are some of these, this is one of my concerns, kind of on a greater level, and have shared this with other people, and I think most people feel the same. Is there's a point at which, right, you got to see what you've got with these young guys, right? Because especially in the bullpen, right? When you're talking about, when you can move a guy up there, he doesn't need to start his whole career. A lot of guys have started out as relievers and then gotten stretched out later to give them a chance, or you just look at it and say, hey, they've got a lot of hard throwing relief. We've seen a couple of those guys so far, right? We say, hey, here's the other thing. I don't want to fail to mention this. That Saturday game, all 4 pitchers for the Cubs were homegrown, drafted and developed within the organization, and all of them went out there and shut the Brewers out. That was the first shutout they've had, I think, of the Brewers since the no-hitter. I think since Alec Mills' no-hitter, I believe. And so to go out there and do that with homegrown pitching, right? 2 of whom are relievers. Keegan Thompson pitched as a reliever, but he's kind of a starter. But you saw that really nice mix. And then but I think again that's where you get to look. There's not a whole lot, like if Norris is going to be questionable, and I still think there's more upside there. But if you're looking at a guy like Chavez, who you picked up on a minor league contract, he's 38 years old. If the upside, and I still think even if he pitches to the best of his capabilities now, the upside is very, very limited. I don't think we're going to see anything at all. Like, remember,
I think we got a very good version of him.
Yeah. And I think we're still remembering that. That's been a while ago, folks. That was 3 years ago, right? Like he pitched 2 more years in Texas and then went to Atlanta. So that was what after that was the 18 season. right? Because that's when they didn't make the playoffs, right? Because he was pitching for them there at the end, and they tried to make the little or I guess they did, but not really, right? So anyway, I don't know. It's just kind of funny because he said at the time he didn't want to ever take that jersey off or retire with the Cubs. Like, maybe he'll get his chance now. I just don't know if it'll be at the end of the season if this keeps up. So we'll see.
Well, and I mean, honestly, it was the bullpen was fantastic. It was, if you take Jesse Chavez, Daniel Norris, and Rowan Wick out of the equation, the bullpen 8 innings pitched, no runs, 2 hits, and 3 walks.
Yeah,
I mean that's very good. Jesse Chavez, got 2 outs, 3 earned runs, a home run, 2 hits, 1 walk. Daniel Norris, 2.1 innings pitched, 3 earned runs, a home run, 2 hits, 1 walk. And Rowan Wick didn't look very good, getting 2 outs and 1 earned run and 2 hits.
I'm scared about Wick because I don't know if you were paying attention, but his fastball was only like, I think he might have gotten it up there 95 once or twice, maybe but he was like 92, 93.
Yeah.
With the fan. Hey, listen, I know it's early. I still wonder not so much whether he's physically affected by that intercostal injury that cost him most of the season. But I wonder how much mentally that's there. But if you have a reliever who's supposed to be mid to upper 90s, and I don't know if this is the case, but if he's not able to cut it loose in that role, like that. It's just not going to work, right? Like you can't go out there and not be at 100%. You cannot be tentative with those pitches. And 93 is not going to get it done if you're supposed to be a back end reliever.
I kind of felt like I don't think the leash on Rowan Wick is very long. He had a 4.3 ERA last year. He just wasn't really good. He had a decent K rate, but it's like, I mean, he was good in 2019, 2020, but I agree with you. I can't believe that the leash is all that long on him, on Chavez, or on Norris. And quite frankly, it shouldn't be, to be honest with you. I think, as you mentioned, there's a lot of young guys down in the system that can easily be moved up to take these guys' place. And the roster limits are going to, when is the April 30th? Is that when it goes to?
Yeah,
May 1st.
May 1st is when it'll change. So yeah, two guys have got to go.
For sure.
And I kind of wonder is Chavez in a, not the same, but a similar situation to Heyward, in which Ross is going to almost force him to play as well. You know what I mean? Like, he'll get out there for a while and then see what happens. You know what I mean? Like, all right,
but you can't put him in that high leverage situation. I mean,
right.
He really just blew it yesterday, to be honest with you. I mean, the Cubs were right there in the game. It was a close game for sure. And there were some calls that kind of didn't go the Cubs' way, but at the end of the day, they really could have won that game. And I would say should have won that game if they would have had more effective pitching from the bullpen. So,
alas. Yeah, I mean, and those things will happen. It's kind of one of those where, funny that we're sitting here lamenting the fact that they didn't sweep the Brewers when they still took 2 out of 3, which is kind of surprising. You know what I mean?
Hey, man, but it's a long season.
Yeah.
You've got to get every single one you can.
You got to get all those wins. And we mentioned this before. We talked about it. I think we talked about it on here, and you and I talked with it when I was out there. So I'll say it again. But if you can get off to a hot start and then just play 500 baseball the rest of the season, you've got a really good shot at the playoffs. And it's not as simple as that in the grand scheme, but really, hey, you're 2-1, you're a game above 500. If you play 500 baseball from here on out, that's not a bad season, right? Given that 6 teams are going to make it. And given that, outside and out, maybe the teams in the West will be, but there's not a lot of teams right now that are jumping out as like, yeah, these guys are great. I mean, look at what the Mets did. They're spending like $300 million, but they're without Jacob deGrom for who knows how long.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, there's a lot of teams with serious flaws at this point. And if the Cubs, tell you what, if they just play a little bit better than some of the high end expectations, which weren't all that high, they could do a little something. I mean, that's
that's what I was saying is if they start 9-1, that's where things can get very interesting, and it sets up real well for them because they go on to play the Pirates and the Rockies, games that conceptually, if you're going to start off 9-1, those are the teams you want
those
kind of
help you
on
get
your
there.
schedule.
Yeah.
And
they
so
just need to get the Reds in there. They just play
unfortunately the Reds are not in there.
Although they do close. I mean, and this is the thing. I don't know if I had a couple beers last night, so maybe I forgot some things, but I think we talked about this too, though. Their September sets up really well, right? Or the end of their season, because they do that's where they pile up some more games against the Pirates and against the Reds. And it's kind of like that divisional thing may play to their favor. I mean, who knows? They could actually make a little noise. I know it's weird that we're all excited about this, but I think this is something that was maybe not as unexpected as what let me say this. The wins, beating the Brewers like they did, and kind of the Brewers pitching looking bad was a different thing. I don't think any of that was expected, but the way the Cubs did it by, being patient and putting bats on balls at a higher rate than maybe what they have, that is what we had expected to see. It's just that I think they were able to do it in a much better manner than what we had maybe even expected. So interesting to see how that will continue to play out moving forward.
And Seiya Suzuki, I think, was really the star of the weekend. He went 3 for 8. He had 4 walks, super patient approach, 375 average. His first home run, which is just he crushed.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, if you're looking at Seiya Suzuki and like coming into kind of these first few games, I personally was thinking, all right, he just needs to kind of settle in and just kind of get used to Major League Baseball. And he didn't it wasn't insane. Like he didn't just go off completely, but what he did was very impressive. And it's like, this is a guy that this is not the best he's going to get. I mean, he is going to be way better than this. And if he started this way, I just think the upside with Seiya Suzuki is, I mean, he's got all-star potential for sure.
Oh, easily. I mean, and if you look at the way he does things, right, and I just put a piece out here earlier this afternoon about, and it was based on, I think it was a Jared Diamond, or no, Justin Frank, I think, put out the tweets in there about how patient he is. I mean, I think they said he saw 29 pitches that were outside the zone. 26 of those were correctly called balls. 2 of them were called strikes. And then the final one he swung at and hit for a single. So that means of 20, and he's seen 57 total pitches, right? 57 total pitches, 13 plate appearances. Of those, 29 were outside the zone. So just a little over half. And he only swung at 1 of them.
Of which
one
he got
pitch
a
outside the zone. And that's against Corbin Burns, Brandon Woodruff, and Freddie Peralta, 3 of the top pitchers in the National League. The Cy Young winner and the 5th place finisher. And then Peralta has his K per 9 is like 13 over the last 3 years. These are big time strikeout artists and big time strike throwers, other than over the weekend. And for him to immediately go out there, and I think what's most impressive about that is he did it in his major league debut. His first 3 games as a major leaguer, when normally you would think you've got a lot of adrenaline, you're a little too jumpy, you're going to chase a little bit. He has so far the lowest chase rate, or the lowest, you call it O swing percentage, whatever you want to go off of, who's outside the zone swing percentage, the lowest in baseball. He's actually got the lowest overall swing rate in baseball. Again, I know 3 games, but if you look at those numbers for plate discipline, they tend to start stabilizing at around 100 pitches seen, and he's at 57 pitches. So, it'll take another probably 2 to 3 games for that to really get to a number where we can start to say, yeah, this is who he is. But we also saw that you and I were at his spring training debut. He struck out his first 2 times looking at pitches that weren't in the zone, right? Like, he knows the zone very, very well. And I think what we're seeing is the kind of guy who, again, as he continues to adjust to how those pitches are called in Major League Baseball, the velo and the stuff that he's going to be seeing. But, I mean, again, the 2 dudes he faced in those first 2 games have average fastballs of 96 to 97 miles an hour. They're some of the hardest throwing starters that are out there, period. And they have some of the nastiest stuff. So to see him do this against those 3 pitchers is really, it's not just impressive, in terms of the, I said in terms of home run, in terms of batting average, any of that, to me, it's the fact that he can go in there and continue to stay within himself in that moment. And because I think that's what we see a lot of the times with these guys coming over, or they first get called up and they're trying to prove themselves and they're trying to, and dude, it doesn't seem like he was phased at all. He just came in and looked like he'd been doing this for years at this level. So that I thought was the coolest thing to see. And it just seems like he gets it, right? He's joking with people. Everybody seems to like the guy. And that was pretty neat. And that's what we heard about what he was looking for. He wanted the culture of his new team and city. And again, this is a dude who felt like he just walked right in as if he'd been a part of the team forever. And I can't say enough about him. It was really, really exciting. And I think, man, this guy's only 27 years old too, right? Again, I will continue to tell you that you are silly if you compare him to Kosuke Fukudomi. It is a poor comp among various reasons, but the fact that the dude is only 27 years old, right? So
yeah, exactly.
His career, he'll be about where Fukudomi was when he started it. So.
I'm going to go out on a limb with Suzuki, and I'm going to predict he finishes in the top 3 of the MVP race. I think what he showed in this opening series, his patience and his power, and his just approach was something that I think is going to be really tough for major opposing pitchers to get over on. I just don't see at least this first season. So I'm going to predict that he ends up in the assuming he stays healthy in the MVPs, Rookie of the Year. Yeah, of course. I mean, if he's going to be in the MVP race, it'd be in the Rookie of the Year.
Yeah, I'm not going as far as you. I will say he'll win Rookie of the Year. I think he gets the Rookie of the Year award. I don't think he'll be in the MVP conversation to the extent that I won't go as far as what you did. He may get some votes, possibly, but I think he wins Rookie of the Year.
Top 3, book it.
Mark the tape.
There it is. But you know who I was really kind of not excited about was Nick Madrigal. He didn't do any of the things that we thought he would do. Again, it's only the first 3 games, but man, he did nothing. He had 1 hit and 1 walk, and really just nothing.
Yeah, he was kind of there. The defense has left a bit to be desired out there for him as well, and that goes back to this spring. And some of that, I talked about Wick. It's possible some of that goes back to just kind of mentally adjusting after, you got a surgically repaired hamstring. The hardest thing for any athlete to come back from is not the physical aspect of being able to play again. It's the mental aspect of trusting your body. And so I think that's a part of it with a guy who has the skill set he does that's not predicated on power. He is that Nicky 2 strikes, right? He's a guy who will battle through those long at bats and continue to just foul off until he puts that 2-strike pitch in count, 2-strike pitch in play. And so I think we'll see a little bit more of that from him as he kind of gets used to some of this stuff and gets settled. It's got to be a little jarring too, to have been traded. He was inactive at the time, because he was on the IL, and to still be in Chicago, just on the other side of town. There's probably a lot of weird stuff there. I think that comes around a little bit more for him. But at the same time, if it doesn't, or if Ross feels like he needs to give him a blow here and there, they've got more than enough guys for that middle infield that they can spread some people around and, whatever they've got to do with it between VR and who knows if Simmons will be back. Maybe not. Maybe Simmons will just go away. I don't know. I doubt it, but who knows?
Yeah, I don't think so. So yeah, so really top to bottom, really interesting. The starters for the Cubs were just unreal, right? I mean, I couldn't have predicted. In fact, I said many times that I was concerned about Hendricks. I said that right here on this show, and I'll eat those words. But Hendricks came out and looked amazing. I mean, the fact that he had 7 Ks, he was totally dominant. Gave up only 5 hits and 1 run. I mean, Steele, Stroman, it just, wow. I was so impressed with the starting pitching this weekend. And I mean, it just, hopefully that continues. It's, we'll see, but really the key takeaway for me at least was Hendricks. It was just outstanding what he did.
Yeah, and throwing that changeup, especially the right on right. You know, a lot of guys are a little bit fearful of that, and obviously Hendricks has the different changeup grips that he'll use. Or it's not so much the grip, but the finger pressure that he applies. You know, whether it's his middle finger or his ring finger, based on where that pressure is, he can get the ball to kind of push one way or the other, and he can do that right on right. And man, he really had that work, and I think he's one of them where he actually benefited significantly. I mean, a lot of pitchers do, but I mean, I think he as much as or more than anyone from getting out of that dry desert air in Mesa to, you know, it's not really so much desert anymore. You go out there, it certainly does not look as if it's some barren wasteland, right? But still, it's a much different environmental profile than what you've got in Chicago. So he goes from that dry heat, and I'm sure the grip and the way the ball moves in that is very different from then getting to that kind of really moisture-laden cold air. And I think the ball did a lot more of what he wanted it to, because, man, there were a lot of pitches he was throwing out at spring training that just looked flat, that didn't have the life to them, and the movement, the shape that he wanted. Boy, did he look good. And that, I mean, and once he gets rolling, that's the weird thing with Hendricks. We see how many times you see it one way or the other. When there's been times when he's going bad, it gets sideways in a hurry.
It's ugly. You're just like,
right?
You want to cover your eyes and
oh
not look
God,
anymore.
don't do that again. But boy, when he gets in a groove, all of a sudden you're just seeing him flip those change ups up there, and then he'll just spin in a curve every once in a while and just keep hitters guessing, despite throwing in the 80s. So I loved that, and just watching him work, because we talked about it. I wrote about it. Like, I was scared about that. He was one of the biggest questions about, because, you know, I know people like to be like, well, you're just working on things. Yeah, when you're Kyle Hendricks, it's, you know, it's not like he's developing a slider, you know what I mean? Or like he's got his fastball up now to 96 and he's trying to dial that in. Like, no, there's nothing really for him to work on. But I think it very much was a product of him just going out there with confidence, getting going, and getting a roll. And if we see that, if it's good Kyle Hendricks, like not the Kyle Hendricks from last year, gave up 31 dingers. That's the tone, man. It's very different, and having the differentiation, you go from him, you know, the way he throws, change up heavy, and being able to do all that, to then Steele coming from the left side, you know, and then over to Stroman throwing 6 or 7 different types of pitches, you know, kind of Yu Darvish light. It's very different all the way across. So I like, so far, what I've seen. I have serious concerns with what they do here at the back end with some of the guys coming up next. So.
But like we mentioned, there are, exactly. Yeah, the options there are limited. I thought you were going to start talking about the bullpen, which I have serious concerns about. But
well, that too. But I mean, the next two guys, like, what's the rotation gonna? You know, how are they gonna swing through this? And are these guys stretched out? What do you do there? So,
are they going with a 4-man rotation? Because I looked at the starting pitchers, and they've got Drew Smiley going tomorrow and Kyle Hendricks going on Wednesday.
Well, they can, because, you know, they had the extra day off. I mean, they got today off.
But I guess they're just
they got the extra day,
trying to do that to keep him kind of in his
so they can do it for
rotation.
that first time. And I think that's what you saw with, you know, Keegan Thompson would have been kind of, I mean, we knew Miley was going to be out, and then once Mills hit the IL to start the season, my initial thought was, okay, they'll move, you know, they'll probably move Thompson in there or something, or into the spot that would have belonged to Mills. And they may yet do that, but they were able to, in essence, piggyback him in that game with Steele, and kind of, again, allow him to stretch a little bit, allow him to get his feet under him. And you don't need him again because of that second. You've already had 2 days off now, right, with 3 games. And so you can kind of reset things again, get it back going. And then, and maybe by then Mills is off the IL if you've made 2 trips through it, depending on whether he's actually ready to come off. And, you know, how much of that was about, did he really need to go on the IL? Or are you saying, well, this is our 5th starter and we know we're going to have at least 1 extra day off in there, so we could still reset the rotation anyway and get a couple turns through and then activate you when it's time, and kind of give one of these other guys a shot? Because, again, you're talking about not only do those 2 extra spots go away from the 28, 26-man roster, but Miley and Mills and Simmons all have to come off the IL. Presumably, maybe they don't all come off the IL. I don't know, but if we assume they're all coming off at some point here in the not too distant future, now you're talking about 5 people from the current roster who will not be on it at a certain point for one way or another. A couple of those guys are outfielders who are out of options. Hermosillo, Ortega. How does that happen?
Yeah.
I think here's what I think. Well, what I would like to see happen is that they move on from a couple of those veteran guys who are maybe on some minimum deals who have been kind of reclamation projects. I would prefer to see them move on from some of those guys to make room on the staff. My fear is that simply because guys like Thompson, Ethan Roberts, Scott Efros, who knows, have options, that unfortunately those guys may be heading back to Iowa for a while to kind of wait that out because they'll do some procedural stuff. I hate seeing that, honestly. If the young guys are pitching well and you got to make a decision between a guy who's going to be in your organization for a few more years and one who at best is going to finish out this season with the team and isn't providing you anything in terms of an upside, give him his walking papers, eat the $1 million or whatever it is, and let's move on. But I guess they'll cross that bridge when they come to it, but they have shown in the past a propensity to kind of stick with the veteran guy versus, just shuffling somebody else down to Iowa. So I don't know.
Well, and whose call do you think that is? I mean, is it a combination of Ross? I can't just be David Ross making that call, right?
No, I mean, I'm sure he's hashing that out with the front office, right? Because there's other things. Yeah. I mean, especially when it's something where you're going to have to make a personnel move, if you got to DFA a guy because he doesn't have options, I'm sure that's much more a situation where the front office is in there. But yeah, I mean, they've got to make some choices at that point. So yeah, I think if it's between those things, yeah, they've all got to sit down and hammer it out and figure out who goes where, because it's a bit of a luxury to have those extra 2 spots right now. That goes away before too long. And I mean, who knows? I don't hope. I certainly, and I know Ross doesn't hope and Hoyer doesn't, but as much as you don't want anybody to go out there and be bad, you would much rather have the performances stand out in such a way that you can make an easy decision, right? You don't want to have everybody pitching well, as dumb as that sounds, right? You obviously you want everybody pitching well. But
I think we have that,
right? Yeah.
Fortunately, between Chavez and Norris, I think there's 2 clear candidates based on a very, very short, list of kind of accomplishments or lack of accomplishments, we should say. And then the final thing on the starting pitching was Stroman hitting 95.
Yeah,
he was amped. He was amped. I mean, it's so cool to see him on Twitter and kind of the back and forth that he did, that he's been doing with the fans and everything like that. But like, he proved how amped he was when he hit 95. I think. I don't think we should expect to see that going forward.
No, probably not. But hey, there's a lot of guys who were out there. I mean, hell, Josh Hader was throwing 99 on Sunday as well. I mean, Hader's always had a good fastball, but not 99 on the black. I mean, he was up there. I'm trying to think of who else was it. Wasn't Snell, was it? There was somebody else who was out there who had really done some serious work this offseason and got it out there. Mitch Keller, right, Pirates. He's had his stuff like frequently up over 100. We're seeing some guys who have been around for a little while who have added significant velocity over the last year or so. And that is quite interesting. So we'll see whether and how that continues, but I like it. I mean, Stroman was able to go out there. He obviously pitched well enough to get the win. And I think it's just a consistent approach that he's got. I mean, he's going to keep the ball in the yard. He's going to keep the ball on the ground. And as long as they can kind of hold the game. Yeah, it was Cobb. Cobb's the one that Alex Cobb was throwing like 98 or something. Like, okay, I mean, hell, maybe it's because they weren't testing for a little while during the lockout. They had about 100 days to get a couple of cycles in there. And who knows, but no, I mean, I think a lot of it's just, there's a lot of different training that's available out there now that these guys who in the past hadn't really concerned themselves with their velocity have now been able to do so. And so you're seeing a little bit more of that. So again, I very, very happy with what I saw from the rotation overall. And like I said, to me, the big takeaway, I know you mentioned Hendricks, to me, said this already, was on Saturday seeing a full foursome of homegrown pitchers go out there and shut down Milwaukee, and to do it with very different styles.
And to look really good. Yeah. I mean, like, it wasn't just like 4 homegrown guys getting into the game. It was 4 homegrown guys getting into the game and completely dominating.
Yeah. They all, and again, it's just really neat to see. Okay, so you got a lefty starter, you got a righty kind of swing man, piggyback guy coming in relief, and then you got Efros, who's the sidearm guy, and then you got Ethan Roberts making his major league debut, and he has got some of the craziest spin rates. So if you look at Ethan Roberts, I'm sorry, let me go back. Efros releases the ball more to the third base side than any pitcher in baseball because of that sidearm, because he's over there on that side. And then Roberts generates elite level spin. His spin rate numbers will be among the best in the majors on pretty much all of his pitches, slider, curveball, fastball. And if you look at the movement that he got on the slider, that could be, if you look at the average on that
slider is like, it's such a wicked pitch.
It looks like a frisbee. Like, I mean, and it, like, part of that was him being amped up or whatever, but the dude just, like, he's out there with two outs. He's got this big old shit-eating grin that he just can't even hide as he's coming set. He's got a big old smile because he just loves being out there. It was just cool. That was really cool to see. But I like how, so you look at Tampa Bay and the way they built their pitching staff over the years. There's a really cool graphic that's out there somewhere that you could find where they did it maybe from a couple years ago, but it had stills of all their pitchers at release points, and it was like their arm angles. It looked like whichever is it Vishnu or Shiva, who's got all the different, all the arms. But it looked like it was like that. So you had all these different, from like a right-handed Submariner to a left-handed, and then all the way up to these over-the-top guys. So you've got this full staff of dudes who, like, nobody's arm angle is the same. And I think that, as much as going lefty-righty, can be very disconcerting for an opponent, because not only are you not seeing the same pitcher, but you're not seeing the same style you're not seeing the same mix of pitches. That's very difficult to get used to. So seeing the Cubs maybe being able to actually do that to an extent is really cool.
Yeah. So a lot to be encouraged about heading into this next series against the Pittsburgh Pirates. It's going to be a short series, and just so everybody knows what we're going to be doing here on the podcast/webcast is we're going to be going at the end of every series, so we can do a breakdown like we just did, and then kind of give you a little preview of the upcoming series. So we'll just look forward to that. This Pittsburgh Pirates series, the Cardinals just beat them 2 out of 3. Hard to say what's going to happen. Although we do go, Drew Smiley takes on Jose Quintana.
Baby.
If Quintana comes out and just shoves, I'm going to be so angry. I don't expect that's going to happen. But and then it's got Kyle Hendricks against Zach Thompson. So honestly, it's so early to say that the Cubs should win this series is, I think, kind of getting ahead of ourselves, but they should definitely at least win one of the games. Let's put it that way. I
would hope so, with only 2, and that's what's kind of weird is you feel like a 2-game series is so unfulfilling to me, in a lot of these, unless you win them both, and then it's fine. But yeah, it's
really away
to
too. So it's like 2 games in Pittsburgh. So you don't even get settled whatsoever.
Right, which is again, it's a little bit weird, but a Pittsburgh team that doesn't really have a lot of talent, although sometimes you do that, and this is part of the reason why I like having all the young guys up, is because they do feature a lot of young guys who don't know what they don't know, who are coming in there and they don't know they're supposed to be bad, right? I mean, Brian Hayes is a stud too. I mean, so like that dude beat up on the Cubs early on before he got hurt, right when he first came up. And so I'm interested to watch him play. I mean, I think regardless of whether you're on a rival or not, unless it's the Cardinals, I like watching these young guys come up and just see them be able to kind of come into their own as stars and kind of the new regime of stars coming up. But I mean, the Cubs should be able to win if they keep up what they did against the Brewers. They should easily be able to do that against the Pirates. But I don't know. I always feel weird about it. But yeah, hey, you split there, you stay above 500, keep on moving.
Exactly. And then they travel we don't want to get too far ahead, but they travel to Colorado to take on old friend Chris Bryant. And the Rockies surprisingly won 2 out of 3. And of course, we can cover this a little bit more on Thursday when we go. after the Pirates series. But interesting that the Rockies were able to take 2 out of 3 from the Dodgers. Again, it's early, so you can't really take too much from all this kind of these early games or whatnot. But
yeah, and one thing I want to mention about the games in Pittsburgh, this is the weirdest thing. The Tuesday game starts at 3:12 Central. 3:12. I don't know what that's all about. And then the Wednesday game starts at 11:35 Central.
yeah.
Those are the weirdest. And then the game, they go out to Colorado and it starts at 7:40, the first game, Central Time. These are the weird. This is what the hell is 3:12? Is something I have yet to see.
Pirates home opener. So maybe
weird.
It has something to do with the home opener. I don't know.
Yeah. Because but
yeah,
I mean, I would get it if it was Chicago because 312 would be the area code. And it's like, okay, cool. There's some significance. It's in Pittsburgh. Like what's 312? I don't know. But we'll see.
Yeah. So well, and the Wednesday game starts at 9:35 my time.
Yeah. Wake up and
that's like drop the kids
watch,
off
baby.
and yeah, just
I'm hopeful. I'm just hopeful the weather here holds out, and I don't know what's going to be pushing out that way. My son is supposed to have games Tuesday and Wednesday. Tuesday is supposed to be kind of nice. Wednesday we're supposed to get all kinds of storms and stuff. So, but the good thing is that Wednesday game is early enough that even if we do play here, I'll still be able to follow most of the game, if not all of it. So that's good.
It's like I'm quickly looking at what the forecast is going to be like. Oh, it says tomorrow partly cloudy, 67. That's nice. And then Wednesday showers, 40% chance of rain on Wednesday. So hopefully that does not shutter the game. But
that's the thing that sucks about having a game that's early like that, right? Is because you don't have that. If the rain is coming in the morning at all, you don't have that time to really prep and hope that it ends right before an afternoon or an evening game. Plus, Cubs are going to want to get the hell out of there, right? Because of having it's not like you got a day off afterwards. So we'll see. I just hope
I know
not one of those.
They go from
issues.
Pittsburgh to Colorado. Fortunately, the game the Wednesday game, like you said, is very early. And then the Thursday game is at 7:40 Central Time. So
they got time.
That'll be plenty of time. So in any case, we'll circle back on Thursday during the day, probably around the same time, and hopefully we'll be celebrating another Cubs series victory, which would mean a sweep.
That would be nice.
So until then, everyone, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you later.
See ya.